Welcome to the video, guys. This is not one of my normal videos. I'm just uploading this in case anybody missed what Dominic Raab had to say on the BBC earlier today, giving some more details on the lockdown rules for anyone who does not understand what Boris Johnson said last night. In short, you can go out, you can meet friends, providing of course you stay 2 meters apart. This can be done in your front garden, driveway, park, or anywhere else, provided of course you are outside and still 2 meters apart as per the social distancing rules that they've put in place. More information is due to come out at around 2 PM today, so hopefully that can clear up any part that anyone is unclear on with regards to these new rules. Because if any of you have looked on Twitter in the last 20 odd hours, you will see half of the left-wing media journalists losing their complete shit because they have failed to understand basic English from Boris Johnson. Now, there is also something funny about this interview that we have here between Dan Walker and Dominic Raab, because the slimy toad Piers Morgan, who actually blocked me on Twitter yesterday because I pointed out him and Susanna are both stupid if they didn't understand these rules, has apparently gone on Twitter today and got extremely salty that Dominic Raab appeared on the BBC and not on Good Morning Britain. This is in response to a tweet from Dan Walker that is possibly throwing an underhand dig at people like Piers Morgan, who just sit there and berate their guests constantly whenever they come on the show. As you can see on the screen now with the tweet from Piers Morgan, the salt is literally flowing from this snivelling shitweasel. So let's see the interview that got him so salty, because obviously Piers Morgan just wanted to attack the government for every and any reason he could think of.
Jackie says, can you change the one person you meet up with as long as it's only one person each day? So one day, can I see my mum, and the next day, can I meet a friend or my dad in the park?
So we said that as long as you're going, if you go out of home to the park for exercise, whatever it may be, you can go with members of your own household. If you're out in the park and you're 2 meters apart, we're saying now, and use some common sense and you socially distance, you can meet up with other people. The key thing is people want to get outdoors, particularly with this weather, particularly I think the mental health and frankly the frustration people feel if they're cooped up for too long for protracted periods. We want to make sure that people can enjoy the outdoors more.
Okay.
But people must stay alert, because the more we do some of the things that we want to do, the more we need to just be careful about this social distancing. People keep the 2 meters social distancing, then they'll be fine in those outdoor spaces.
OK, but what about the question of how many people? Mark, for example, says, can I meet my mum in the morning and my dad in the afternoon?
Outside, in the outdoors, staying 2 meters apart, yes.
Can he do that in his garden or on the driveway, or does it have to be in a park? That's a question from lots of people today, who you appreciate, I'm sure, are desperate just to have some contact with their loved ones.
Moving forward, we are not moving to a stage where we say that households can mix inside the home. We've asked SAGE, the group of government experts, for advice on how and when that might be done in the future, but we're clear at the moment that that's not a safe thing to do because of the risk of the virus spreading. So just to be absolutely clear, people cannot mix within the homes, so 1 or 2 or 3 or more households cannot mix together inside the home as of now, and that advice is not changing. But we have asked SAGE for some advice on it, because for all the reasons you mentioned, your viewers mentioned, we understand people would like to be able to do that at some point in the future.
OK, quick one. Football in the park, lots of concerns about that this morning, about people from various households. Ball starts being kicked about, you know what it's like, all of a sudden loads of people are involved.
No, I don't think so, because you can't stay 2 meters apart. So we do want people to play more sport, and let me give you one example of something you can do. 2 people from the same home could go and play tennis, because that's something where they could stay 2 meters apart from everyone else. What you couldn't then do, and this is why we say you've got to stay alert, you couldn't then go into the clubhouse and mill around where you would be within 2 meters of other people. So football would be one of those where I think it would be very difficult to stay 2 meters apart if you're playing, 11 aside or even 5 aside.
OK, David says, please can you ask Mr Raab, how is it possible for me to be able to see my boss every day if he returns to work, to spend hours with strangers in the park all day, but I can't see my 2 daughters, who I'm assuming don't live with him and live separately, at the same time?
Well, so the advice about going back to work is predicated on, first of all, we want people to work from home if they can work from home. If they can't work from home, we're saying, for example, in manufacturing or in construction, you can go back to work. We're working with the employers to make sure that's safe. In relation to the gentleman that you referred to, he could see his daughters in the park or outside if they maintain their distance 2 metres apart. But we need to be careful about this social distancing. So in that context, that's why we're saying stay alert, so that we control the virus and we don't see, after all the gains we've made, all the sacrifices people have made, to see the virus level spike up again. That's the number one thing at this level. We've seen it in other countries around the world. They've gone into lockdown, they come out, they do so without proper measures in place, and the virus goes back up above the so-called R level 1, which risks an exponential growth in the virus and a second spike. So I think in that case, there's this gentleman could go and see his daughters outside in the park, 2 metres apart.
Okay, this is one from Paul. You say you can drive to other destinations. Where and how far is another destination? Can I drive from South Wales to Bristol or London? Is this intended to be local?
So you can drive, and it's not really so far the distance that matters. You can drive as far as you want to drive to go and, for example, go and walk in, I don't know, a park or a particular area that you're fond of, as long as you maintain the social distancing. But obviously, if you're going from one part of the UK to another, so if you're going from England to Wales or from Scotland to Wales, and different rules are in place because the devolved administrations take a different approach, you need to be very mindful of the regulations that they've got in place. But certainly within, for example, if you live in England or if you live within Wales and you're moving around within that nation, subject to you just need to comply with the rules that are in place by the Welsh executive, or here in the UK, in England, the rules that we're setting out today.
In other words, don't go to Scotland because we Jimmy Cranky will throw you in the slammer.
Who should be going back to work this week and how do they get there? That's probably the best way of summarising the thousands of questions we've had about that.
So if you can work from home, stay at home, because that is the best way to avoid the interaction that spreads the virus. If you can't work from home, then you should now go back to work, because there's been enough time, we've got the virus down, the consultation, the measures have been put in place in the workplace, for example, manufacturing or the construction setting, which means it can be done in a safe way. If at all possible, walk or cycle or drive to work, and only if absolutely necessary, use public transport. And on public transport, we're going to be setting out more detail, more guidance to make sure that can be done in a safe way at 2 o'clock and then in subsequent guidance tomorrow.
OK, quick one from Mizran says, what about my job? My manufacturing job, they won't be implementing social distancing measures. I'm pretty sure of that. What do I do? And also, my employer's head office, says someone else, is in England. I live and work in Wales. What do I do when I'm pressed to go back to work?
Well, the full detail and the guidance is going to come out in the way I described. The 50-page document will come out at 2 o'clock and there'll be more guidance for workplace settings. But if you're in manufacturing and it's possible to go to work safely and securely because the hygiene measures have been put in place, because other precautions have been taken, and we've worked very closely with the employers in both the manufacturing and the construction setting, and they will be giving advice to their workers, and obviously that needs to be followed very carefully, then it should be possible. I can't, without knowing the details, talk about every single job, but what I can say is that in those sectors like manufacturing and construction, we work very carefully to make sure that there are COVID secure settings for people to go back to work. But obviously employers will need to give, and will give, I'm sure, in the next day or so, before Wednesday, when these measures kick in, further clearer advice for particular businesses. OK, I've
probably got time for 2 more questions. This is from Aaron Potter, who's a teacher. How am I meant to socially distance 30 reception kids when they go back to school, potentially on the 1st of June?
So we're not taking any decisions right now on school, other than to say to vulnerable children and the children of key workers, you can and you should go back to school. But from at the earliest, the 1st of June, we're saying that we would start with reception, year 1 and year 6 in primary schools, different arrangements for secondary schools, and over a phased, conditioned way, and working with the schools and the primary schools to begin with, we will make sure that we would have clear guidance about how that can be done in with social distancing, with hygiene. There's the evidence suggests that there's very little, there's much lower risk for young children getting this virus. The risk is that you get transmission through children between households, if I can put it that way. So what we want to do is make sure, and we'll obviously have more evidence by the time we get to the 1st of June, which will be at the earliest, subject to conditions, the point at which we start in a very phased, controlled way proceeding. So we'll be providing that guidance, and we'll be able to monitor very carefully what happens to the virus between now and then.
Now before I go, I've started doing live streams and uploading gaming content on my second channel. If you would like to come and join me for a live stream to chat in real time, have an interest in gaming related content on YouTube, or just want to follow me over there because you are a legend, the link will be down in the video description below and as a pinned comment. I hope to see you all there. Now as always, before I go, I want to thank our PayPal, Patreon, Subscribestar and YouTube members for supporting the channel, along with everyone who watches my videos. Remember to let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe with the notification bell and share this video as it helps the channel a lot. And I will see you all in the next one.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors. Slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires. And that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.